Hi, my name is Rob Calori. I'm the Director of Information Technology at Westchester Library System, and today I will be talking to you about protecting your privacy. Just a quick disclaimer, this presentation is for information use only. There is no warranty or guarantee of any kind, express or otherwise. If you choose to consume and/or use any of the services noted in this presentation, you do so at your own risk. Rob Calori and Westchester Library System are not responsible for your actions in any way that arise from the use of the information contained in this video. Privacy protection is a personal responsibility. This video does not cover all possible preventions or protections, and the tools mentioned here are not guaranteed or warranted in any way. That said, a little bit about me and about Westchester Library System. Westchester Library System is a cooperative library system consisting of 38 public libraries in the county of Westchester, New York. I myself have a master's in information systems from Pace University. I'm also a library school student at SUNY Albany, and I've spent the last 10 years working at Westchester Library System in the IT department in various roles. And currently I am the Director of Information Technology and in general a privacy advocate. Whenever I start talking about privacy in groups, I usually get one or two people that will say, well, I'm not ashamed of anything I do online and I have nothing to hide, so why should I even care about privacy at all? That argument really doesn't hold water for me. And Edward Snowden, who is arguably a controversial figure, made a statement that makes a lot of sense to me, which is arguing that you don't care about the right to privacy because you have nothing to hide is no different than saying you don't care about the right to free speech because you have nothing to say. Just because you're not ashamed of what you're doing online doesn't mean you shouldn't take a little bit of care in worrying about who's seeing it and what they're doing with it. Because just because you're not thinking in these terms, there are places and companies that are. For example, I don't very much appreciate if I go to one particular website to buy something and then they turn around and every site I go to after that is featuring an advertisement for items like that. I don't want one company advertising to me almost endlessly wherever I go online. I want my shopping on one site to be private to all other sites. I don't want ads being pervasively entered into my visual stream everywhere I go. And so you should understand that when you're shopping online, there are sites, many sites, that are capturing what you search for, what you look at, and then that data is being used in other venues in order to sell you something. So today we're going to talk about a number of things. We're going to talk about the risks that are out there, some of the risks that are out there, the high-level risks. We're going to talk about the cloud and email. We're going to spend a good amount of time talking about passwords, privacy risks in general use of the web, and most importantly, what role libraries play in helping you protect your privacy if you're a library user. So before we talk about the risks associated with the cloud, I want to clear up the myth of the cloud first. You have to acknowledge that, first of all, there's not just one cloud, there are two clouds. There are both public and private clouds, and both have risks associated with them. Neither is immune, and neither is perfect. We're going to not only discuss the differences between the two clouds, but we're going to discuss how to develop a cloud strategy that will meet your needs and allow you to judge the risks for yourself. So let's demystify this cloud. First of all, there is no magic cloud. The cloud is not this special place. It is not Narnia. It is not Middle Earth. It is not in any fictional novel you have ever seen manifested in the real world in any way. It is not a magic place. Public clouds are servers that you can't see, that you can't touch, and that you can't control. That's what a public cloud is. It's a box just somewhere else. There are two kinds of clouds. There are public clouds and there are private clouds. For example, if your corporation or your company or even you in your own home sets up servers that allow you to bring your data wherever you go and that you can access it in a secure way, regardless of where you are, well, you've set up a private cloud. If your company does that, that's the same concept. Here in Westchester Library System, we have a private cloud that allows library staff to access their files wherever they are, as long as they're in a library, and even from outside the library. That's our private cloud. We don't use public cloud services to deliver what is considered to be a cloud type environment. You can do this at home. So here's how public cloud services work. You have your PC and you have your internet connection, and you use your internet connection to connect your PC to a service that may or may not be online. For example, if you use a photo sharing site or a social media site to share pictures and video, or you use a service online for making documents or spreadsheets, services like Office 365 and Google Docs. Not that this is an endorsement or a condemnation of any of those services. Both those services are fine services to use, but there are many others out there as well. Those are public cloud services. Those are services where you access a server that you don't control, that you don't see or you don't touch, and you use that service, and your data lives on that service. This as opposed to the private cloud, which is when the device that's holding the service or holding the data is on your side of your internet connection, and that you control, that you can physically take the wire and pull it out of the back and say, this information is no longer online. That is a private cloud service. There are lots of great hardware manufacturers out there. Again, not an endorsement of anyone in particular, but just to name a few, like Western Digital or Seagate, that make these wonderful devices that you can put on your network inside your home or office that will hold your data for you and allow you to access it when you're out of your home or out of your office, wherever you are, through an application. Some even employ some public cloud services, so you really have to be careful and look and investigate how these services work before you make a purchase. But there are ways, again, to get public cloud type services without having to give up your information to a public cloud service. That will keep your information within your control, and you have the ability to pull it back whenever you'd like. So when you're developing your cloud strategy, there's a couple things you have to remember. First of all, there may be a place for the public cloud. If you're an individual and you're on the go and you have limited means, you're not going to be able to have a full-blown office productivity suite cloud-based hosted in your home. We have to be realistic about it. There may be a place for, say, a Google Docs or an Office 365, and again, not an endorsement of any of those two products, but just using them as examples, and there are others out there. There may be room for that in your life. You have to weigh the risks and the costs and the benefits of build versus buy, of building it yourself versus buying it from a cloud service. And I say buy even though some of these services are free, because you do have to understand that when you use a free service online, even though you have not handed them cash in hand, you are still buying, you are still consuming a service from them, except you're not paying with cash money or money through PayPal or on your credit card or Zelle or whatever the other money transfer services out there. But you're paying with your information capital, with your privacy capital. When I talk about privacy, I also talk about how your privacy, your private information is a cash tender that you can use. You can consume a free service in exchange for letting the provider have rights to certain information about your usage patterns or the content of your information, or even use of the files that you're uploading to their service. So you have to understand what those risks are, understand what those costs are, truly understand what the benefit you're getting out of it is, and make a determination about whether or not this is something you want to do. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to do a private cloud service, it needs to function as reliably, if not better, than the public competitor. That means in all aspects of operation, not just privacy, but also security, performance, and capacity. If you're going to constantly run out of space, for a file storage where you could be using your Microsoft OneDrive or your Google Drive or Dropbox, again, not an endorsement of any one product, you need to make sure that you have that same level of security, that same level of performance, and that same ability to have capacity that you would with a public cloud service. Otherwise, you're doing a detriment to yourself. So you have to be comfortable with making sure that you're going to have satisfaction from the service that you're using. It has to be as good as the public competitor. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and possibly wasting your money. The other thing, whether you use private or public, regardless of any of these things, you need to keep a backup. Don't trust that the company providing you the service is going to be solely responsible for keeping your data safe. They have catastrophic failures too. We haven't had a big one happen in recent history that I can think of, but you don't want to be in a position where you get an email that says all of your data has been lost and we're sorry, because they're not providing a guarantee either. Unless you know that service is absolutely giving you a guarantee of backup, don't trust that they do. So make sure you keep a backup, an external hard drive tucked away in a locked drawer in your house. Every once in a while, you pull it out, you back up all your files, and you know that your files are safe. Now that we've talked about the cloud, let's talk about email. So email is one of the oldest technologies on the internet. That said, it was designed in a time when security of the data in an email really wasn't much of a concern. So the 3 facts I want you to know about email is: 1, that email subjects and body text are sent in plain text over the internet. That is completely insecure. Even if your connection to your service is secure, the inter-service connection is not. So what a lot of people say to me when I say the first fact, which is that the body text is in plain text, well, if I email somebody on the same service, they say, well, it's not traversing the internet. Okay, let's use the most popular email service in the world as our example, Gmail, which I love. But again, you make your own decisions. This is not an endorsement of any one product, and this can generally be applied to every email service. Great. Gmail to Gmail, Hotmail to Hotmail, Yahoo to Yahoo. Sure, the email doesn't have to leave the service, and therefore it's not traversing the internet, and it's not going to traverse the internet in plain text. It's going to stay within that secure ecosystem of that particular service. But what happens when you send an email inter-service, say from Gmail to Yahoo, or Yahoo to Hotmail, or any one of those variations? When it traverses the internet, that message is getting sent from one server to another in plain text. And if it's intercepted, anybody can read that data. There's no special tools. It's not encrypted. So you need to be very aware of that limitation. Not saying don't email. I'm not saying encrypt every email. I'm just saying be aware. For example, if you're going to send a username and a password in one email, that has the potential to be intercepted. You might want to consider separating those emails when you're sending your son or your daughter a username and password. Maybe you want to email one and text the other, or email one and phone call the other, so that you don't have both the username and the password traversing the internet in plain text. The other thing you need to know about email, and this is one of the most important things, is that email addresses can be spoofed. And by spoofed, I mean a person can masquerade and send an email looking like it's coming from somebody else. There's no such thing as a verified sender on email. So I could send you an email that looks like it came from yourself, that it came from the Pope, that it came from the President of the United States. That means that if you see an email that came from the Pope or the President of the United States, do not take it for granted that that is actually what happened. So just reviewing some of the issues with email, you can't mask who you email and you can't mask who emails you. You certainly can't mask the subject or the content of your email. And email addresses can be fake. They can be spoofed. Another concern is that email messages can contain viruses. There are solutions to these problems. First is you can actually encrypt the content of your email using tools like GPG, which is a key pair encryption method software, and we go into how GPG works a little later on in this video. There are anonymous email systems like Yopemail and others, and I'll talk about features of those in just a bit. And then there are services that provide anti-spam and antivirus for both private and public email systems. Just citing one example, Gmail has a very effective antivirus program that runs on any of the attachments in your emails. Sometimes if it doesn't work, it'll actually give you a warning and say this file was not checked for antivirus and gives you a warning. It's not 100% effective, of course, but it is fairly effective. And that is also a service, my understanding is, that you can buy for private email servers. So you need to just be aware of the fact that just visual inspection is not enough. You might want to consider an email service or an add-on for your private service that will do some additional algorithmic checks, some systematic checks for you. And the final note, and it's the most important, is be judicious about what you open. Think about it before you click on a link. Think about it before you open a PDF or download an attachment of any other kind. Certainly not an executable or a zip file or a PDF, unless you know where it came from. The biggest rule I like to tell people is a 1-minute phone call will save you days of heartache. If you get an email with an attachment or a link and you're not sure if it sounds a little fishy to you, if it's got the signs and signals of it being something that could potentially be harmful, don't click on it and find out the hard way. Call the person. There's a good chance that if you got an email from somebody that you want to open an attachment on, you probably have a method of contacting them other than email. It's probably a friend or a relative or a business, and you can call them and say, hey, this is John, this is Jane. Did you send me an email with a link? Did you send me an email with an attachment? Oh, you did? Fantastic. Let me open it. Oh, you didn't? Let me delete that email. You should know, by the way, that I got an email that looks like it came from you. You should check your system to make sure that you haven't been hacked. So let's take a deeper dive into some of the tools that you can use to protect your emails. I mentioned Yopemail. One of the things I like to note when I talk about these two tools, IT people are really great about naming things. We really don't know how to name things creatively. So Yopemail, Yop stands for Your Own Protection. So this is the Your Own Protection email service. And again, this is not an endorsement of Yopemail, and there are other alternatives out there. This is just one example. But Yopemail is a disposable email service. Any email that comes in there, you can basically send an email to any single string of characters at yopemail.com, and it will arrive in that inbox. There's an inbox created for every possible string. It will receive any email that comes into at yopemail.com and create an inbox for it. And that said, it will hold those emails for 8 days. There's no passwords and it's totally anonymous. So what does that mean? Don't use Yopemail for your banking, obviously, because everybody has access to every account in Yopemail. It's completely open. And it's meant to be used for anonymous things. You can also send mail to other Yopemail accounts. So you can anonymously send emails to and from another individual as long as you both know what accounts you're going to be using for that sending to and from. If you're going to use encrypted messages, This is a fun way to do encrypted messages back and forth to an individual. It's kind of like using a decoder ring when you were a kid. And then finally, you have to remember to encrypt sensitive messages because, again, Yoltmail is a completely open service. You'll be putting yourself at huge risk if you were to use Yoltmail like a private email account. GPG and PGP. PGP is a standard called Pretty Good Privacy. It's an encryption standard that uses public-private key pairs to encrypt and decrypt information. And you can use PGP through software like the GNU Privacy Guard, GPG. That allows you to create your public-private key pair. You can then post your public key on a key server like MIT's widely used server, pgp.mit.edu. And then you can have people use your private key, your public key, to encrypt a message that's going to come to you. And then you would use your private key, which you share with nobody, to decrypt the messages that come into you that have been encrypted with your public key. There are other tools in addition to GPG out there like GPA or Cleopatra, which run on Windows. GPG runs on other systems as well. And again, these can not only just be used for email, but for encrypting files, say, on your flash drives or on a CD or DVD, on anything that you might share. One of the things I like to tell people when I'm talking about GPG is, if you were to lose a flash drive, what have you given up? Now, if you encrypted all the files on your flash drive and you lose that flash drive, what have you given up? The number of people who use flash drives to hold things like passwords, like email spreadsheet or Excel spreadsheets with passwords in them, is astounding. And if you find a flash drive and you open it up just to figure out who it is so you can return it, you'd be shocked to see what kind of private information people store on a flash drive that can be easily lost. So be careful and think about not only what you're storing on a flash drive, but how you store it, because taking a minute to learn how to use encryption software and encrypting those files on that flash drive before you put it on there might just save you a lot of trouble down the road. So here's how PGP works. You have a key pair, a public-private key pair. Someone wants to send you information. They want to send you this personal information, and they want to send it to you in a way that guarantees only you will see it, regardless of how it's sent to you. So they take that information and they lock it with a public key. They get your public key from that MIT server I mentioned earlier. They know it's going to say you want to send it to me, you want to send it to Rob Calori. Great, I'm going to send this to Rob Calori. I lock it with his public key, and then I send it to him. I put it in a flash drive, or I burn it to a CD, I send it to him in the mail, or I email it to him, or somehow you get that message to me, that encrypted message. That encrypted message looks like the circle in the middle. It's all jumbled up. It's all random characters and just messy text. And it means absolutely nothing to anybody who sees it in transit. But when I receive it and I say, oh, that's an encrypted message, probably meant for me with my private key. Let me unlock that. And I unlock it with my private key, and on the other side, I see your information just as you meant for me to see it in the first circle. That's basically how PGP works. It's like it's the modern equivalent of using a decoder ring, except nobody else has the decoder ring but me. It's like a lock with two keys, where only one key can lock the lock and only one key can unlock the lock. If you haven't heard about ransomware by now, consider yourself lucky. Ransomware is basically a virus that has the most malicious intent of any virus out there. Most viruses are out there to scam information off of your computer, or just to cause a little havoc on your computer, or turn your computer into a zombie for the purpose of executing some kind of larger virus takeover. Ransomware is completely different. Ransomware is all about just getting money out of your pocket. It's a virus designed by hackers so that you can help fund their operation. And how it works is that Ransomware will take over your computer. It will encrypt all of the files on your computer, your pictures, your documents, your family videos, all of the things that you hold most near and dear on your computer. It will encrypt them, just like PGP encrypts files, except you don't have the key to unlock it. And then they'll put up a message on your screen that says, hey, we've taken over your computer. We've taken possession of all of your most important files. They don't even try to steal the files. They don't want them. They just lock them up and say, okay, if you want access to these files back, you have to pay X dollars. Go ahead and send a Bitcoin here. So the facts about ransomware you have to understand is, one, there's no way around it. Once it's on your machine, you're pretty much subject to that ransomware virus. The only way to get it off of your computer is to wipe your computer clean. Two, be proactive. Again, think before you click. The best way to prevent a ransomware virus from getting on your machine is to not let it on your machine in the first place. Don't accept flash drives from people that may have viruses on their computers. Always have a virus check on a flash drive before you put it in your computer, or don't put any flash drives in your computer unless they're your own. Don't click on links to websites that you don't know or from people that you're not aware of. And then finally, make your PC disposable. Have a backup. If you get a ransomware virus that encrypts all of the pictures and all of the documents and all of the videos and all of the things you hold near and dear on your computer, and you can't get them back, well, if you have them in a backup on an external hard drive that's sitting in a drawer somewhere in your house, guess what? Everything on your computer is completely disposable, and you are now immune. You can say, fine, trash the computer, delete all the files, rebuild it from scratch, and then you just restore from your backup. And that way, you are completely immune to any ransomware that might come. So passwords have long been debated in IT circles. You know, what's the best password? What's the best system for making a password? IT folks will debate for hours and hours and hours about the best passwords to use and the best way to make passwords that are effective. Let's start out by talking about what's not a good password. Terms like God, secret, password, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5 6, admin. None of those passwords are really effective passwords. First of all, some of them are the default passwords on systems that are put on there so that everybody knows what they are, and they're intended to be changed. So passwords like that are the first things guessed when people are trying to maliciously get into a system. Don't use those passwords. If you get a system and it has a password on it, by default, you have to change it, because you have to understand that millions of these things are going out there, and everybody's got that same default password. It's the first thing people are going to use. I am a fan of the multi-word or multi-term password, which are longer and better than smaller, complicated passwords. The example I give here is the correct horse battery staple versus library. Correct horse battery staple is a password example from a comic by xkcd.com, which is a math and science and tech oriented online comic, and I'll show it to you on the next page, where they give an example of that versus a complicated password, and they show the effectiveness of that password. But in short, attackers can guess dictionary terms even when numbers and symbol replacement have been used. So my example there, library, where I used a capital L and a 1 for the I and an @ for the A and a capital letter R and an exclamation point at the end. Computers know all those tricks. People aren't sitting there guessing passwords, typing passwords into a keyboard. They're using a program that's going to run off of a dictionary and use all those kinds of variations. And my library with the 1 and @ and upper lower and things like that, that's going to be a completely ineffective password. It might as well have been just library all lowercase. My example to the left, the correct horse battery staple example, uses what's known as diceware, where you look up random terms that have absolutely no personal meaning. You literally take a couple of dice and you take a word list and you roll the dice until you get a number, and then you look that number up in the word list. So you would say take 5 dice and a bunch of words, that a word list that where every word is given a 5-digit number, and you roll the dice and you say, oh, I got 45328, and then you go find 45328 on the list, and that's your first word. And you do that 3 or 4 times, or 5 or 6, or however long you want the password to be, until you have these 3, 4, 5, or 6 consecutive words, and then you can use those words all lowercase, and that's going to be a nice long string without providing just one dictionary word, and that's going to have very no connection to you in any way, because those words are be guessed completely randomly. So, if you're not using words like the kind of car you drive and your kids' birthdays and their names, which have meaning to you. So if somebody's trying to execute an attack personally on you, they're going to use items from your life in order to try to execute their attack. And so Diceware makes sure that the words that you use in your password, have no personal meaning. I'm also a fan of non-dictionary terms. So you might want to create your own word list by getting non-dictionary terms. Now, a non-dictionary term is not just a term that's not in the dictionary, and slang terms are also in the dictionary. So yeah, but there are words, when people are young, they come up with all kinds of fun terms that aren't real in any way and never end up in the dictionary. Think back to those times and come up with some random words, or just listen to some babies babble, and you might even hear a couple of really cool random terms that have no real meaning and have no significance to your life in any way. That actually might be something you want to include in a password. So here's that xkcd.com comic strip about password strength. And in the first pane, it's using the example troubadour, and it's showing you that it's a uncommon but non-gibberish based word, and it's been treated the same way we treat all our passwords. It's got caps and common substitutions with symbols and numbers and all that kind of fun stuff, and entropy, which is a measure of disorder of a system. It has 28 bits of entropy, and a brute force attack where a computer is guessing 1,000 guesses a second. This password is going to be taken down in about 3 days. Now look at the third pane, which is you. Really, it's you trying to guess. How did I make that password? Was it troubadour? Was it trombone? I don't remember. What replacement method did I use? So here's a password that is, according to the second pane, easy for a computer to guess, and according to the third pane, hard for you to remember. Now, correct horse battery staple, which rolls right off the tongue, is 4 random words. It has 44 bits of entropy, and that same computer guessing that password is going to take 550 years to guess that password. And you'll have no problem remembering 4 random words after you type them in a few times. So here's a password that is hard for the computer to guess and easy for you to remember. Now, do not use correct horse battery staple as your 4 random words. Correct horse battery staple is now on that list of default passwords. You don't want to use it. You want to get your own 4. Now, some people will say to me, well, Rob, how can I do this? My bank website makes me use an upper and a lower and all of this. Well, there are tools out there like KeePassX, which will generate passwords for you that meet those requirements and store them for you in an encrypted file on your computer. What you would use your Diceware password for is to encrypt that encrypted list of your passwords. That way you don't have to remember all the complicated passwords. You don't have to use dictionary terms with replacement. What KeePassX will do is generate really long strings of just random characters up and down case and numbers and symbols, and meet the requirements of your, say, your banking site or your whatever site that requires the protection, but not put you in a state of risk where you would where you're doing dictionary words with replacement. And then you can protect that database of complex passwords with your Diceware password that's easy to remember. So let's talk about the web. There are a couple things you need to know about the web when you're browsing. One is that your ISP, your internet service provider, can see and more than likely logs every URL you visit. And the URL, that's the address at the top of your browser, the www.whatever.org that you might go to. They're logging every single page you visit. Not only that, but every website you visit knows your IP address. Your IP address is that, just like your street address, your IP address is the address of your computer online. And so every website that you go to knows your IP address. And from your IP address, they can determine certain things like who your internet service provider is, where you may be located. It's going to give away, not everything, but it's going to give away certain indicators of who you are and where you are. There are certain things out there that make the internet a little bit safer, like HTTPS, which uses a technology known as SSL to protect the content of a web page so that only you and the server know the content of that web page. That's great. But it only protects the content of the page. It doesn't protect the URL. The URL, the address at the top, is still exposed. And if you use certain sites, you'll know that the URL gives a lot more away than just the page name. Quite often, search terms end up in the URL because of the nature of how web pages work. And so you are going to want to protect the URL as well, because anybody logging what URLs you go to will have a running log of all of the things you search the internet for. And so how do you do that? Well, you use a service like Tor. Tor is a browser and a series of relays out on the internet, and we're going to talk about Tor in more depth in a minute. But it's a service that's available to you for free, run by a community of volunteers that not only anonymizes your traffic, but also blocks the URL so that your service provider does not see the URL. So here's how Tor works. If you've ever played a game of telephone to see how a message can be lost just by handing it off to three people, Tor uses the handoff between three relays on the internet to purposefully make a message jumbled. And so here's how it works. Whenever you use Tor browser and you download Tor browser from torproject.org, do not download it from anywhere else but torproject.org, and you launch it. It's a regular web browser, but it creates a circuit of three relays around the world. There's an entrance relay, a middle relay, and an exit relay. The entrance relay only knows you. The exit relay only knows the middle relay and the website you want to go to. And the middle relay only knows the entrance and exit relays. So by the time you connect with the website, your identity has been completely washed clean. So the example here I give is that I want to visit librarytrustees.org, a great website for the LTA, the Library Trustees Association here in New York. And it says, all right, I want to visit librarytrustees.org. It encrypts this little package and it sends it off. Tor sends it off and says, I need an entrance. And the entrance doesn't know where you're going. It doesn't see that you want to go to librarytrustees.org. It just knows that you have this package and it needs to get out. And so the entrance relay accepts your request and says, all right, I will find you a middleman. And the middle relay says, hey, I'm a middle relay. And the entrance hands off your request to the middle relay. And the middle relay says, well, I don't know who this is for, and I don't know where this is going. I just know it came from this entrance relay, and I got to find it in exit. And then it finds it in exit. And the exit relay decrypts the message enough to know where it's got to go, and it does all the communication with librarytrustees.org, and then that goes back and forth to give you your website. So at the end of the day, librarytrustees.org has no idea who you are, and you have no idea how you, nobody along the way knows that you wanted to go there or who you are. It has completely anonymized your traffic, and it has done so in an encrypted way so that your identity has been completely masked. Well, now that we've talked about protecting your privacy on email and protecting your privacy when browsing the web and making sure that all of your information is encrypted and sent anonymously. Why does any of this matter at all? I mean, really, why spend even 5 minutes worrying about what website sees what shoes you shop for? Well, websites and internet service providers collect information to build marketing profiles. Marketing profiles are used for a lot of things, sometimes to present you with ads, sometimes to directly try to sell you things. But at the end of the day, this data is being bought and sold online completely legally in an effort for commercial entities to try to market goods and services to you. This is free commerce. This is what our society is built upon, and I'm not condemning it, but I want to make sure that when consumers are using the internet, that they are fully aware of what they're signing up for. Nothing online is free. If you hear about a free service online, you must instantaneously become skeptical about how they're financing their operation. My mom once told me there's no such thing as a free lunch, and that's absolutely true online. There is no such thing as a free lunch online. Somebody is paying for that lunch somewhere, and it's more than likely going to be you, but it's not going to be with the subscription price of a service, but rather with what I call your personal information currency. Your privacy is like cash online, and you can spend that cash however you want. I won't judge you. If you want to go online and browse without using any anonymity tools and let everybody see every website you go to and everything you search for, I applaud you for making that decision consciously. You need to be conscious of what you buy with your information currency. I will not judge you. However, if you are now aware and want to protect your privacy, you should have all of the tools available to you to make sure you only give away that information which you have determined you are comfortable with giving away. That is the purpose of why this all matters. It's so that consumers online can make conscious decisions about what information they give away, whether they want to give away all, some, or none of their personal information. Another thing you need to be aware of about just the political nature of the internet in this day and age is net neutrality. The concept of net neutrality is that all data should be treated the same, that one provider, whether it be a nonprofit or commercial entity online, should have the same ability to disperse its information online as anybody else. The opposite of net neutrality is the concept of pay to play on the net. And that is currently where we are now that the FCC has suspended net neutrality. This is a threat to freedom of speech everywhere. It creates a multi-class system of haves and have-nots. It is the essence of discrimination within our information society. It creates a mechanism by which either service providers or other commercial entities can make it so that those who do not pay don't get to distribute their information as freely as people who can pay. They can do things like throttling and blocking websites. They can make organizations pay for preferential access on a service, which does a detriment to those who can't pay. This is the beginning of full-blown censorship online and commercialization of our freedom of information through the internet. The internet and the web was given to the public as a means of freely available communication. And the end of net neutrality is, in my opinion, the first snowflake in a snowball that will eventually kill our freedom of speech if we don't do something about it. And so if you're wondering what you can do, consider writing or calling your representative and telling them your thoughts on net neutrality. There's actually a great video if you want to learn more about net neutrality. There's a great video making its way around the web. It's available on YouTube, and you can find it by searching net neutrality and Whopper. And they use this clever video uses the concept of buying a Whopper at Burger King as as a case for how net neutrality works. It's very funny and it's very informative at the same time. So if you want to learn more about net neutrality using a visual example, check out the Whopper net neutrality video that's on YouTube. So here's what libraries do around privacy. Well, first of all, we provide privacy tools like Tor to all of our patrons. Every public computer that's serviced by Westchester Library System in Westchester County has the Tor browser installed on it. We also offer privacy and digital literacy education. So while WLS does not do public programming in libraries, we provide training for library staff for libraries that want to provide digital literacy education to their patrons. And if your library doesn't provide digital literacy education, ask them about it. They may, and you just don't know about it, or if you ask, they may be willing to provide it for you. If you want to have a community conversation, consider hosting a community conversation about privacy. Most libraries allow you to use meeting spaces for any purpose as long as it's not a commercial purpose, and one purpose might be to host a community conversation about privacy risks and privacy tools available to mitigate those risks. Like I mentioned before, write and call your representatives. If you feel that your needs are not being represented in government, we have a representative government, and our voice is allowed to be heard. So write or call or even visit your representative in their home office. Make an appointment and say, I'd like to come talk to you about my concerns about privacy, and I'd like to know what you can do to help. And then finally, support the communities that support you. For example, Tor runs on a network of volunteer relays. Those entrance, middle, and exit relays we talked about earlier, those are all hosted by volunteers. You can host a Tor relay right in your home using spare bandwidth on your internet connection that you may not be using, or during times that you may not use it. So consider starting a Tor relay. Or if you don't want to do that, or you don't feel comfortable setting up that kind of technology, consider a donation to the Tor project or to any of the other many wonderful open source projects I mentioned here, like GPG or any open source project at all. And donations can be non-cash. If you are tech savvy and you know how to do some coding, or you have a website and you can do some advertisement, they are more than happy to have an advocate or a coder over some cash. While cash is great, not everybody has cash to give, and they totally understand that. So just consider supporting the communities that support you. For example, the next time you download an open source piece of software, look at the community and look how you might be able to give back to that community. Here are all the links from today's presentation, and I'll leave that up while I give some closing thoughts. The first of which, all of these tools here are use at your own risk. Westchester Library System and myself offer no guarantees or warranties of any kind. You are solely responsible for the use of these tools and what you do with them. Personal privacy is a matter of personal responsibility, and so please understand that we cannot be held liable for any risks to your privacy. This is something that you need to take upon for yourself. The idea here is that this video is supposed to give you some ideas of where to start and what to be concerned about, but it's certainly only a primer, just something to get the ideas flowing in your brain. There will be more research that you need to do and some more information you will need to find, but it is my hope that this presentation has given you some food for thought, some ideas of where to get started, and information about tools that can help you start to build a better privacy strategy for yourself. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.